everybody, welcome and kumusta? Thank you for joining me. This is Hal, your occupational therapist, and welcome to OT Conversations. Woohoo! What are we going to talk about today, guys? What are the things that are a bit relevant to our practice? I know. I would like us to have a conversation about putting the person at the center of what we do. Okay? And it seems so obvious, isn't it? Because we're therapists and we're looking after patients. And that seems to be almost an idiotic statement, putting person at the center of what we do. Because we're a client-centered profession. They are the boss. Patients are the boss. The reason why we're here is because of our patients, right? To a certain degree. Mind you, the current practice in the United Kingdom is a bit different. In fact, the service and institution, or the NHS, or the workplace, especially if it is government-run, whether it's social services or community services or NHS, district general hospitals. Yeah, these are the ones that are controlling what we do. So, yes, there is always a value and, quote, an impression that patients should be at the center of what we do. But then again, in reality, that's a bit questionable, right? And that is very uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable thing to say. Let's argue on that. Okay, why do I say that? Say a person comes to you and you're out in the community and they say, I want to be able to go back to doing tennis. And you're working in social services. And the person is generally weak. Just been in the hospital following orthopedic condition or a medical condition. And the patient was referred to you in the community. And you get to see this patient. And that was their statement. I want to be able to go back to doing the tennis. Question is, will you do it as an occupational therapist? Will you get the person back to doing the tennis? Will you come back and do some restorative or enabling sessions where person would be using a racket to volley balls or do some walling? I don't think so. Why? Because the social services will not allow it. You don't have any time to do that. And your time is dictated by the service who is paying your salary. So, and no. What about somebody who comes in and they wanted to improve their employability? To improve their employability. And you can improve their employability by looking at their CVs, by looking at their ability to communicate and to speak and how to hold themselves. Is it occupational based? Yes. Is it occupational therapy? Yes. Is it a scope of occupational therapy? Yes. It's vocation exploration, right? But would you be doing it? I doubt. So that was the one component, one argument, right? So putting person at the center of what we do to an extent, because you can only do the things that you can do based on who and what your employer is paying you to do, right? Another scenario, for example, the person comes to you and is an outpatient and they said they have difficulty with showering and they want to be able to step into the bath to shower. Then the person comes to you for a wheelchair assessment because you're in the wheelchair services. Can you do that? No, you cannot do that. So, because, like I said, the institution, your employer is dictating what you should or you should not do. It's not that you can do the things because you're an occupational therapist. You're doing the things because of the scope of your employment. Okay? Uh yeah, that's that. Now let's have a look at a case where it's much more familiar to all of us and much more closer to our day-to-day things. In the ward, for example, you look after a patient and you do your assessment. You do your initial review, right? Sometimes, and I have observed a lot of clinicians for so many years, sometimes clinicians would really start to do things even though the patient does not see it as a problem or as a concern, or the patient has not been consulted about things. Yeah. What would be a scenario? Um, the a scenario would be like, for example, a patient lives in a like a caravan, right? So they live in a caravan and they've been in the hospital for a while, maybe a week or 2 weeks, and obviously they will deteriorate a little bit in terms of their capability, and they would be deconditioned. And then I've observed therapists worrying about a person's ability to access the caravan because there are steps and they are quite high, like a bus step. You have to take a bus step. And then the therapists are worrying so much about this step, about this access. When the case, just to let you know, is a pure deconditioning state of, say, a young gentleman in the 40s, 50s, or 60s, right? So because of that, the therapists are already looking at ways on how to address how deep this thing is, how to make some modifications in the car or get some adaptive aids for the car. Yeah. And one time I asked, what does the person think about this? Yeah. And the response that I got from clinicians is that they don't know because they haven't discussed that with the patient. So in the sense, the clinicians are addressing problems that one patient does not see it as a problem. Yeah. And the second one, patient was not consulted about it. So that's really strange, isn't it? I find that to be super strange and a practice that I think we need to be mindful of. What's the other thing? Getting out of bed, right? The patient can get out of bed with difficulty, mind you. They roll, they have a few struggles, there's a few attempts because they've gotten weak. And because of our tendency and our desire to actually help, and this is a good thing, right? So because we wanted to help, we would issue this person a bed lever straight away. And the question is why? Isn't it? I always question it, why? Have you asked the person first? Has the person expressed that it was a concern or difficulty? Until it has been proven that it has been a problem or the person expressed that it is, then at the time it should not be a problem yet. It should not yet be a worry for any therapist. And if you remember, going back to the old school documentation style of SOAP, S stands for subjective. What is the problem? Right? So the person needed to express that there is a problem and a concern first. Problem identification is actually a second stage of the process of OT, right? If I tell you and if I remind you these processes, there are 4 phases of occupational therapy or the process. There are 4 phases. And the first phase would have been the initial assessment or the assessment phase. And in this phase, what you do is get a picture of the person's baseline abilities. That's the one thing. It's always important because that's where you're going to base their functional abilities. The second phase, the current abilities. What is the current problem of the person? Okay. And you can only identify the current problem by the person stating it or by somebody reporting to you, but the best one would be for you observing it, yeah? So the current abilities. 1, establish the baseline abilities. 2nd, establish the current abilities. Now, find out the next thing would be to actually, if there is a problem or the abilities, you've seen the abilities, if they can or can't do, now you have to find out what is the cause of their disability or their difficulty. Is it because of the cognitive part of things? Is it because of the physical component? Is it because of the emotional component, right? So now you've had a picture of what's happening with your patient. Now, the next stage, which is what will bring the person at the center of this, right? You need to actually identify and confirm the problem with the patient, right? Their current abilities, they may be able to do it with difficulty. Yeah, that you may see as a problem because the baseline was that the patient was doing it with ease and independently. And then on the current ability, they have difficulty. Say getting out of bed, they have difficulty moving or getting out of bed. And then you try to understand why. Because of the physical difficulty, the patient has been deconditioned. That was the reason. Okay? And then, ordinarily, if you bypass the consultation, you would just order a bed lever straight away. You would order all of these things. But then, the next thing would be the one that you forgot or that you skipped, or was that phase of the person identifying it as a problem. If the person doesn't see it as a problem, obviously they know how they're getting out of bed. You ask them, you go and observe them, you go and check. So what do you think of the abilities at the moment? And then they say, it is difficult. Is that difficulty a concern at the moment? Yes. Okay. Now you know it's a concern. Therefore, it is a problem. Now you can actually find out, which would have been the third phase, would be the second phase is, the next phase is you identify that there's a problem, acknowledge that there is a problem. And then the next thing is, how do you want to go about in doing this? You want to be able to get out of bed with ease? Or you want to be stronger? Or you want to be able to use an adaptive aid? Yeah? If the person was independent before, and if it's only because of a physical dysfunction, a person should be able to restore their abilities so that they can get out of bed independently with ease. How do you do that? Restore, practice. But the consultation is there. It has to happen. The person needed to be consulted. They need to identify the problems. And in terms of the outcome, they need to set up what the outcome is, the outcome expectation. That's on the phase 2 of rehabilitation, where you identify the outcome with the patient. And this is under ecology of human performance model, guys. Is it really? Or you would find this in Twombly. what is the outcome that they wanted? Do you want them to be independent? Do you want them to be able to do it with ease? Or do you want them safe? Then, depending on the outcome and depending on the time that is given to you, then you can think of your intervention. Are you going to do restorative intervention? Are you going to practice that bed mobility? Are you going to strengthen the trunk? Are you going to practice the rolling? Or do you want to do a modified independence? You know, you use adaptive aids. Yeah. Ordinarily, if the patient can improve and there's no reason why they can't improve, do the restorative intervention, right? Or if they are elderly, for example, and they really can't, even if you give them an adaptive aid, yes, you have. And then the patient says, that's all right. My wife's going to help me out of bed. Yeah. So that's supportive intervention. So for them, getting out of bed with difficulty and the outcome of them being able to get out with family helping as an outcome, that should be an okay objective, right? Because at the end of the day, your boss is the patient. So it is the patient that should be directing and dictating the things that you do. Okay? That is putting the person at the center of the things that you do. Right. Say another case scenario. Let's think. A person who's been in the hospital for quite some time and has been really frustrated, and they wanted to get out of the hospital, and you know that they cannot manage the stairs naturally, and they cannot manage the stairs without the rail. It would have been easier, it would have been better to manage the stairs with the person holding on to the rail, and you just did not have enough time or the capability or the access to put that rail in place. Yeah? If that is the case, and then the patient says, oh, don't worry about it, I'll go up on my bum if I find it difficult. Right. Would you or would you not go against this patient's advice? I'd say for the time being, if that's what you wanted and I don't have any time, everything is stacked against us in terms of discharge planning, then yes, it should be okay to go up on the stairs on your bum. Why is it okay? Because the patient feels it is okay. They are the ones in charge, and you are the only one that you're only there to support them. It's uncomfortable, but it is the nature, it is the individuality, it is the autonomy of the person that we are trying to preserve. And then obviously, you say, okay, temporarily you can do that, but you know we can make it easier by having a rail in there. Would you like me to ask the community therapy team to pop in and visit so that they can install these rails? And if they say yes, good, then your line of action would be to refer the person to community OT, passing on the risk to another team, and this community OTs will then pop in and then put the external rail or the internal rail. And what intervention is that? It's a supportive intervention, right? So again, the person is the one who is in charge. They are the ones in control, and you are there to facilitate the independence, the autonomy. Okay? You're not there. We are not there to be gods to our patients. Yeah. I mean, there are other professionals that can really direct the person, and they don't have any other choice but to do it because they're bound by ethics and the professional responsibility. Like doctors, for example, if it is an emergency, the first rule is to preserve life, right? With or without consent. But that is a different thing. That's a different scenario. It's a different profession altogether. But once the person is stable in their body and that they now have to make that decision, right? Then we have to respect people's autonomy. Okay. And autonomy, this would have been the ethical discussion now. Now we're going to the ethical side of things. Autonomy. Yeah. You do no harm. Okay. You make the most that you can. And then you inform the person. Yeah. Truth, justice, autonomy, veracity. Yeah. Being truthful about what can and can't be done. And the person then will have to make a choice whether they want to or not. Okay. So, what else? How else do we put the patient at the center of the intervention? Yeah. I think OTs has to do that, right, guys? And it's just a reminder for you all who are listening. There are processes, yeah, but it is the person. The person should be at the center of these processes rather than the person being a slave of the process. All right. Well, I wish I could talk more about this, but I am running out of rant to say. This conversation is a rant involving OT, or it could be a relevant information involving OT. And it makes this conversation a riot conversation. If you learned something from this, do us a favor. Like, share, subscribe. Share it with your friend. Open a cup of tea. Learn together and grow together. Just remember, guys, anything you do matters and has an outcome. Until next time, bye.